Hi there, I'm Scott Lowe with Asheville Tech Media, and I'm here at the 2016 Deltaware Emerging Technology Summit, where I'm joined by Krishna Subramanian.
Hi.
Right?
Yes,
excellent.
Got it perfectly.
Chief Operating Officer of Komprise. Thank you for joining me, Krishna.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
So tell me about Komprise. What's your value? What do you tell your customers? What's your elevator pitch?
Perfect. Yeah, we help businesses manage data growth and cut about 70% of their costs by analyzing data across their current storage and transparently moving data to cheaper storage, whether it's cheaper NAS, object, or cloud storage.
So is it basically helping them identify what data is hot and keeping that on the expensive, quote unquote, disk? And then you're basically moving the not so used data to cloud or to cheaper SATA disk or even tape maybe?
Exactly, that's right. So we partner with all the major storage players in the market, NetApp, EMC, Quantum, SpectraLogic, Google, Amazon, Azure, Scality are some of our partners. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what we do. We analyze data. Over 70% of data typically is not used within weeks of creation. So we help them identify that. We show them the ROI of moving it off to a cheaper target, and then they set policies, and based on those policies, we move the data for them transparently without changing any user or application experience. And as you know, there have been prior attempts at doing things like this, and the big difference with us is the technology itself. It's a scale-out solution with no central bottlenecks, no agents on the storage, no stubs, no impact on the hot data path, adaptive architecture. So it's all those things that make the solution work.
Now, once the data is moved, is it still transparently accessible if someone needs to go back and get it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Exactly. Yeah, the moved data looks exactly as before to users and applications. So if it's moved to a disk or object target, the data still looks like files with all the same access controls, all the metadata is intact on them from the source and accessible exactly as before. If it's moved to tape, it still looks transparent, but we do give an indicator that the data has greater latency. Mm-hmm. So if it goes to tape or Glacier or any of those high latency targets, then we do give a visual indication of that.
Very good. Yeah. Now, when we think about what people are getting, so this is can help them obviously on capacity, but what about performance?
Yes, it's interesting. A lot of times performance bottlenecks are not created because the storage system can't perform, but it's because it's overloaded with things that shouldn't be on it. Mm-hmm. So by moving off a lot of inactive data from the high performance tiers, we do help improve performance of those tiers because they are not over allocated.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. So you basically, especially when you think about even sort of a hybrid storage system, you can keep more in the cache because you're going to get rid of some of that stuff that's could be sitting there otherwise.
That's exactly right. And if you think about it, it's actually amazing. Though most storage administrators intuitively know this to be true, it has just been too hard for them to implement. They know that over 70% of their footprint that's residing on their primary storage is not being used, and yet it's not only consuming that space and slowing down performance, but it's often also being replicated and backed up on primary storage. So right. the compounded effect of it is sometimes 3 to 8 or 9 times the cost of the storage media itself.
So, I mean, a lot of times also when you look at this kind of stuff, they say, well, we know that only 25% of our data is being used, but we don't know which 25%.
That's the other problem, especially when you look at data at scale. I mean, today, a petabyte today is what gigabytes were a decade ago, right? It's increasingly becoming that way. Most of this data is billions of files across hundreds of thousands of directories. So to do this manually would be virtually impossible. Mm-hmm. And that's where automation at scale really comes in.
Now, what about going deeper? I mean, when we talk about data aware, mm-hmm. a lot of times we're talking about an understanding of where the data is, but also what it is. Mm-hmm. What does Komprise do in that respect?
Yeah, so we not only look at metadata, but we also provide customers a way to tag data, because often at source, they know more about the data than any storage system ever could. And we provide ways to do deeper content indexing and to use all that information not only to manage the data, but also to search and find relevant data.
So you can actually help users both manage their data as far as capacity goes to put it in the right place,
Yes.
and actually help them find data later on, which could be next to impossible in some organizations.
That's right. And imagine if you could build data-defined volumes on the fly and give to a Hadoop job, or so not only give it to a user, but also give it to another application with the right access controls on it, as if it were in its own data lake without having to ever extract it out. That's what we enable. Think of it as virtual dynamic data lakes.
Very good. Well, thank you for joining me today, Krishna.
Thank you very much, Scott. Thanks for having me.